Welcome to Ars Libri, an everyman's journey through Western literature, where we explore the literary arts book by book, reading, retelling, and reclaiming our rich heritage. We're continuing our series on literary theory or literary analysis, where we just talk about essays that people have written on the topic of fiction, literature, children's stories, and that sort of thing. We've done Tolkien, we've done Chesterton, now we have something from C.S. Lewis. He actually wrote a series of articles about children's stories, literature, fiction, and writing. Those essays are compiled in this book that you see. It's called On Stories, and other essays on literature. So you can find these free online, or you can just buy the book, which I did. What we'll do in this episode is read his On Stories essay. It's called On Stories, the essay. So just to be clear, the book is called On Stories, but there's an essay called On Stories. We'll read it together and comment. I guess the point of these podcasts is to show people how to think about stories. Our main show is that we just read books themselves and discuss them. But these people help us understand why stories are written, who they're written for, how they're written, how to read them, their value, their history, the development. And I found it so far to be extremely helpful. Reading Tolkien's On Fairy Stories, that was really enlightening to how Tolkien himself thought about writing fairy stories. It shaped my understanding actually a little bit, because I thought fairy stories were just for children, but then Tolkien here is explicitly saying who they're for and what they are. And now I read them with greater wisdom, greater knowledge and insight. So let's jump right in. We're going to read On Stories by C.S. Lewis. This is Lewis. It is astonishing how little attention critics have paid to story considered in itself. Granted, the story, the style in which it should be told, the order in which it should be disposed, and above all, the delineation of the characters have been abundantly discussed, but the story itself, the series of imagined events, is nearly always passed over in silence, or else treated exclusively as affording opportunities for the delineation of character. That's entirely true, by the way. In schools, I've seen this happen so often where instead of actually discussing the story, you discuss character development, or the three main plot points, or the themes of the book. What the book is saying to us about gender dynamics, or power dynamics, or inequalities or something, rather than the story itself. Lewis comes right out of the gate pointing out that nobody talks about the story. It's very rare that you'll sit through a college class, or even a grade school class of literature and actually discuss the literature itself.
In high school, I went through a book with part of a co-op called, I think it was called Hollywood Worldviews. Mm-hmm. And that is what he does. He shows you the arcs.
Yeah.
He shows you there's really only, maybe 7 different types of stories, and they all fit into, these different types. And that was very helpful to understand, because he did approach it from what is the story.
Yeah.
And as such, what does that mean? Because each type of story is saying something different, or it's a different type. To approach it from understanding the story helps you to categorize what it is you're supposed to get from it, more than just looking at the plot.
I would say, though, at least what I'm hearing Lewis say right off the bat is the story itself is something that you walk through rather than analyze, rather than categorize. Humans, it's a tendency we have since Adam to name the animals, put everything in order, categorize, analyze it. It's not wrong to do that, but a story is not something that you analyze. It's like, imagine you go and meet someone for a date, a woman, or if you're a woman, you meet a man for a date or something, and you come home and you just analyze it and put it into a spreadsheet. This is how tall they were. This was their accent. This is their ethnicity. This is what they ate. This is the color of this and what they wore, and you just categorize it
this
and then
is their
dissect
personality
it.
profile.
Right. And then you make a chart and a graph of all the people that you've known and dated, and you kind of Just trace the arc of your own dating history. Like, what are you doing? Are you forming relationships, or are you forming some spreadsheet that you can upload to a website somewhere? Like, what is it that you're doing?
Yeah, we're data hungry.
Yeah, we're data hungry, but also we think that in reading Shakespeare, for instance, and analyzing everything, we think that we've mastered Shakespeare. Like, oh yeah, that's the story where this and this happens, and be sure to look for that and that, and then, yeah, been there, done that. Really? Have you? Is that the purpose of Shakespeare?
Right. It's like, but did you enjoy Shakespeare though? Did you just read it and enjoy what you read?
Have you become a more noble person because of this? All right, let's get back to C.S. Lewis. There are 3 notable exceptions. Aristotle in the Poetics constructed a theory of Greek tragedy which puts story in the center and relegates character to a strictly subordinate place. In the Middle Ages and the early Renaissance, Boccaccio and others developed an allegorical theory of story to explain the ancient myths. And in our own time, Carl Jung, and his followers have developed their doctrine of archetypes. Ooh, archetypes. C.S. Lewis says that Carl Jung and his followers developed archetypes because archetypical readings of Scripture are very popular among some branches of Christianity. Both the dispensational, charismatic crowds and among some Reformed crowds, like James Jordan, Peter Leithart, and these people. Archetypical, everything is archetypical. Adam is archetypical, Eve is archetypical, the garden is archetypical, the serpent is archetypical, the apple is archetypical, everything is an archetype or a prototype or a type or a symbol or a whatever. I wonder who invented this and where. I don't know, I haven't followed it. But it's interesting to me that people, instead of just reading the story, everything becomes archetypes.
Well, he just said that Carl Jung.
I know, but in the scriptures, I'm sure that these guys would say, oh, well, but long before Carl Jung was saying this, Origen was saying it, and, Chrysostom right here, look, he's using the archetypical pattern. I'm sure they would point to someone long ago who did this once or twice. But people today are in the past century, actually, the 1900s, have clearly turned it into a school of thought. So I think that's what's important. Surely someone before Carl Jung came up with the idea of an archetype. But what he's saying, I think, is that Carl Jung turned it into a lens through which you view all of it. So there are some trends, at least within the dispensational and in the Reformed crowds, where this isn't just, oh, there's an archetype here or there. It's every passage of Scripture is archetypical. And you're supposed to see this almost like Platonic way of viewing things. The form, everything is the pure form, pointing to the pure form. So the story is no longer about the story. David and Goliath isn't about David and Goliath. In fact, whether that actually happened or not is immaterial because it's pointing to higher truths about either slaying dragons metaphorically or about Christ or about the end times. Something has to do with like the 7 smooth stones of the 7 horns of the beast. And it's going to, you think I'm joking. This is how some of these people talk. And you realize, though, that you're dealing with people who are using archetypical hermeneutic when you've left the story.
Right.
You're no longer in the Garden of Eden with a talking snake. You're now in the 7th heaven, and there's thrones and elders and all this weird, crazy stuff going on, and you're viewing it through the lens of this archetypical form world of spirits and stuff. And then you can really kind of just mix it up and come out with whatever interpretation you want at that point. So like reading Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, you're not reading Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. You're now in this archetypical world of forms and symbols and things, and you're in 21st century feminist gender studies class. That's what this is all really about. So it's a way to get out of actually interpreting the text. It's a way to get out of story. You're not actually reading the story itself anymore.
Yeah, I think to do that requires humility. To put away your preconceptions and things and actually listen to the story and see what it's saying and work to actually understand it and what the author may have actually intended.
Yeah. That's all for the free portion of this bonus episode. If you'd like to listen to the rest, you can do so by becoming a paid subscriber at arslibri.substack.com. You'll unlock all our bonus episodes, including the Plutarch series and the Literary Theory series. You'll also get extensive book lists and have the satisfaction of supporting the show.